Hi, everyone, and welcome to one more episode at Ultrax Podcast. These are Football Talks 101. My name is Marko Matushinsky, and today with us we have Alberto Filter. Alberto, hi, and welcome to this podcast.
Hi, Marco. Thank you for having me here in this podcast. For me, it's an authentic pleasure to be here with Ultrax, and thank you for having me.
Thank you, Alberto, for your time. Thank you again for being here. Alberto, you've been working at the FSI Lab for quite some time, and we met according to that, to that position, and we met in few occasions. We were in Spain, then in Croatia. You were in Zadar at our conference, and we always discuss about interesting topics. And this is the idea why we connect to tell the people and to explain them your way of thinking and how we see things in football, but also in research. But I will now stop explaining that part. I will leave this part to you to explain a little bit to the listeners. What's your background, what you've been up to, how you started to work as a researcher and strength and conditioning coach, and of course, how you ended with the FSI Lab.
Yeah. I see myself more like strength and conditioning, but I really think that the research part is fundamental for move forward in this area of knowledge. So I'm a researcher from FSI Lab. FSI is the acronym of Football Science Institute. I dedicate part of my time to research about the variables that explain the performance in football. And in my other side, I'm strength and conditioning with individual player. I am an individual consultant of professional football player, in which maybe I learn all knowledge about how I pick up, I collect from my research, and I dedicate this knowledge to my player to improve the performance, to mitigate the risk factors. And I always say that I have two parts: the strength and conditioning and the research. I think that is a good complement to increase and to improve the day-to-day work in football. That that it is a science that every day increase the knowledge. Every day you have to be updated in this area.
That's for sure. And how you, let's say, when someone asks you, doing strength conditioning on the pitch and doing research, do you like something more, like being on the pitch, or writing papers and researching things? Because when I talk with my colleagues, just today I had one talk with one coach. He's a football coach, and he still told me that he gets nervous when he's not on the field. He doesn't like to be in the office and things like that. Do you have also experiences like this, or you like to combine?
I like to combine, absolutely, because when I dedicate more time on the field, I need to obtain conclusion about the method. And when I dedicate more time to the paper, to the writing, to the research, to the reading papers about any topic, I need more time on the field to check it, that this is real. It's not only paper, that is real. And as you know, I will say that 50% of the paper maybe can be not applied on the real context.
Yeah.
So sometimes we have to rethink about what the science say and what can really apply on the context, in my context. So maybe we have to rethink about what is the real science and what is the science, the applied science.
Yeah, I like this, how you combine it, applied science, the science that the question is coming from the field, then we want to study it and then again apply it to the field. And this brings me to, I know that we talked about it before, you and I, about the role of sports science. What do you think about the position of sports science in teams or in football? We have like strength conditioning coaches, rehab coaches. Yeah. Now it starts to be quite popular in football to have sports science. Why I'm asking this? Because just the other day I discussed with one. He was instructor for UEFA, and we discussed about sports science. And he told me that, I don't know, back in their league, I think it was Belgian league, that they had like sports science position, like even 2 sports scientists in a team. And I told him that, well, in Croatia, we don't even have this position in clubs. Still, it's not something that is common practice. And well, I think it's good that we start to think like this. Maybe we need this kind of position, to ask questions like this. So what do you think about that? Because your position is the combination of it.
Yeah, it's a hybrid, because I think that a good sports scientist is that people that can explain in an easy way what the science say. So sometimes the sports science is in the middle between the paper and the strength and conditioning. It's not in the middle between the paper and the player. Maybe the strength and conditioning is a join between this part, because you have to control this ball. You have to control this crazy ball. You have to implement all this data to the day-to-day. So it's so difficult to be a sports scientist. This is the first step. It's so difficult to understand a paper, to criticize a methodology, to analyze in detail the papers, to understand all variables, to analyze a biomechanical, about a physiological approach. So, but maybe these people avoid the real context, or not avoid, but doesn't know explain in easy way what they want to apply in the day-to-day. So maybe sports scientist is in the middle between the paper and strength and conditioning. And strength and conditioning try to filter the knowledge to achieve to the coach
and to implement it. Yeah,
because sometimes we talk different language, so everyone have to talk in the same language. For me,
that's very important. Yeah, that's very important. Like you said, talking the same language and having good channel of communication. You know how it is in football. Sometimes we miss to say something, or this information doesn't come to the head coach or to the strength conditioning coach in rehab process. So communication is also one big aspect of everything. But to get back to our topics for today, so I would like to stay a little bit more on the FSI Lab. Can you explain your position in the FSI Lab? How does it function? What your everyday working day looks like?
Okay, I work maybe like coordinator of the lines. We have more than 9 lines in FSI Lab. Within of each lines, we have different projects about, I don't know, the lines about bioanalysis, the lines about the most demanding periods, GPS, tracking, I don't know, internal loads, injury. So FSI, as you know, is in the middle of the club, in the middle of the knowledge on all this faculty of professors. So the FSI Lab born to create the knowledge, and it's not only about to show the knowledge is also about to create our knowledge. So our knowledge is with our club, with our partnership clubs. We have more than 40 clubs in FSI in agreement.
Wow. Yeah.
So we have a department in which we try to solve the problem of our club to obtain knowledge about performance, injury, other aspect. So my main role is about coordinate all these projects, all these lines with Fabio Nakamura and Jose Asian. So you can imagine the level of it.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So are very, very special because we work together in the same direction, and we have very similar thinking about this of science and football. It's not about science and sport. I always say that science and football, that some people say that football is a chaos. It's not a chaos, it's a football.
Yeah, I think I will get back to this. I agree with you, but I want to use this occasion to say hello to Fabio. Fabio, hi, and to everyone from the FSI family. And yeah, I really like the whole idea how you are, functioning, how you are helping and collaborating with the clubs, especially the research areas that you are hitting. And one of the areas that you are, well, I can say specialized in, like to check and to research, is the area of testing and performance in games and in training sessions. And my first, let's say, official question when it comes to training conditioning is about testing. And it's always a good question to cover, especially as we are getting a lot of new technologies inside, the approaches are changing, the ideas are changing, and so on. So how do you look at testing? How do you apply it? And what's your philosophy behind testing in football?
Marco, that my philosophy in testing is so special in terms of how I like to see the testing in football. I think that the vast majority of strength and conditioning see testing like testing in sport. Use the similar test for basketball player, handball player, or football player. My way to see that this area is different. I think that we have to think in our player in football. So I really think that testing or profiling in football is far away what players do during the competition. So sometimes we have a good external validation, but poor internal validation. It's on the contrary, bad internal validation, but good internal validation, but external validation. So we have to think about, okay, we use a lot this counter movement jump, for example, the vertical projection for assess or profile our football player. But we have to think if we really assess the vertical jump capacity of our player to jump, because the jump in football rarely occurs in purely vertical trajectory. So I think that we have to replan the testing in football. That nowadays we continue applying bilateral testing in football, like mid-side pull, for example, and other tests. But if you looking for the relationship between this test and the specific situation of football, the relationship is moderate. Even in elite level could be very, very low relationship. So we have to be closer in terms of testing in football about what we want to test, and if we want that player go to the test with a maximal intention. So because, as you know, for example, if you use the CMG to test player, rarely football player apply the maximal intention. They do the test without motivation. So I really think that we have a lot of variables that we can control to be one step closer of the high intensity actions that's more similar to what player do during the match.
Yeah, I think that, like you said, taking the things from the games and then creating the testing procedures, then creating the test, and then explaining what is happening in a game. This is what you want to say, am I right?
Yeah, I always say that the match is the reference. So
the reference,
yeah, we have to see what our player do during the match to obtain the test. The question is that at the end we want to compare between different players, but I could have my test in my team because I say that these high intensity actions always repeat in my player. So I create sometime my test. It's not necessary that everyone use the same test to compare between them. So everyone want to use counter movement jump because they so standardized, but question is, what say the counter movement jump? The second question is, really the player apply the maximal intention in the same?
And yeah, definitely, especially about the intention, you know.
You can apply, for example, a program and you test before, and you test, for example, before any stimuli, fatigue protocol, and sometimes you obtain better data after the fatigue protocol than before. And this, I have a lot of data, raw data about that in CMG. However, if you put a ball on the overhead, the player, and you say attack the ball, if you put a ball, I don't know, 1 meter overhead, and you say, okay, attack the ball, and you see how player apply maximal intention, you can test the landing. It's not totally specific situation, but it's more specific than before. You can see how player landing. You can see more variables related with that, only with one specific or a 50 specificity level with a ball, only with a ball.
And it's the importance of specificity, am I right? So you argue that specificity is more important than generalization in modern football.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know that, for example, 20 or 30 years ago, one Olympic player, one Olympic athlete can obtain different medals in different sports, for example, throwing, and then jumping, and then running. Today it's impossible because the sport is fully developed. And before, this sport is in the medium level, but today the technical action, the details of the position, the details of the specific demand on the match are crucial to define what are your profile, your high intensity actions. And it's not, I say that it's not a position profile, it's player profile. Because in the same position, you can obtain absolutely different profile.
Let's stay a little bit on this. This is quite interesting because this, what you said, also can be applied to methodology in learning things, but also developing things. So, you know, there is two paradigms, like training according to the position or training according to the profile. You know, so the profile is you, and the demands are the position. So your profile is more important than the position. Am I right? So you need to improve the profile so that you can answer on the position demands. So, like, am I going in a good direction or?
Yeah. For example, we have now a project in FSI in which we try to looking for what is to explain in details how players do the high intensity actions. And you can see that the variability, the match to match variability is so low. The same player always perform the same or so similar, because it's what they know to do. So normally the midfielder always perform the same high intensity actions or so similar. If you never expose to the heading, rarely you are going to do that. You can do it, but you cannot explain your training or base your training in that, because this is the worst cases scenarios. This is not typical, and people normally prepare for the less common actions. No, what player do during the match normally? Sprint 5 meters, this change of direction, abrupt or light change of direction, Cavalier sprint about this direction, this level of jumping, this high intensity distance, and it's with the ball, it's without the ball.
Yep.
How player do, what is the starting position in his acceleration? How decelerate with the ball, without the ball, in lateral sides, frontal sides. So we have to define what my player do to define the profile of this player. And then you can obtain the performance factors that explain these actions.
Yeah. Why do you think now when explaining the profile on the games, when we are talking about the profile, so it's a locomotor profile from GPS devices, am I right? So how much change of direction you have in right direction, in left direction, up, down, left, and right. Yeah. So this is the way how you will analyze this. Am I right?
We analyze, for example, a different aspect. We analyze, for example, first of all, the locomotion, as you say, and mechanical acceleration, deceleration, and all GPS tracking data. Okay, but there is another way. Two variables, very important. Technical. What is technical? The relationship with the ball, and then biomechanical. How these actions occur from biomechanical approach. So it's so important to have in account the opponent and the ball and the biomechanical variables, because not everyone decelerates in the same way. Depend on the part, in the parts of the pitch in which you dedicate the most deceleration. If you are, for example, in the lateral, in the axial, depend you decelerate lateral oriented or in frontal. Because this is football. This is football. If you have the white line, you decelerate in lateral oriented. So why we test deceleration in frontal plane? I am reviewing now a paper about compare deceleration in frontal and in lateral, and it's crazy the difference. It's crazy in normal population. Can you imagine in elite level? It's so much different, because 2-3% in high level is so much difference. It's high difference. It's not low different. So we have to replan and to think more about football movement.
Again, football movements. Yeah.
Vertical jump in volleyball player is the same that vertical jump in football player?
No, definitely not. Yeah.
The injury
when it comes to biomechanics,
the injury biomechanics, the ACL injury, the ACL injury, for example, is the same in volleyball, basketball, or football player?
Yeah, but the mechanisms are different. Now was one study that analyzed that between sports, ACL injuries, and you can see that, the research is just been published before a few days or something like this. It was ACL study that they checked different sports, team sports, individual sports, and what are the mechanisms and everything when it comes to ACL injuries. And they discovered the things that you said right now, different mechanisms, different ways of rehab after that, so different biomechanical analysis. So, this should be football-related, let's say, things. And I totally agree with this. And that's why I ask you that question, because it's not the same if you play against a good opponent that is playing in this system, that is first on the table, and they, had that kind of tactical obligation, because this is something that will dictate your GPS locomotor profile, because you are moving according to the opponent and your goals. So explaining GPS without this, it's...
But Marco, researcher continues to research, for example, the rehab situation of ECL in the same way basketball player
like before
than football player. They say from control to chaos. What is chaos? From control to chaos. No, it's not chaos. It's football. It's not chaos.
Yeah.
No, it's chaos. Chaos is more doubt. No. It's football, and we have opponents. We have ball. We have different parts of the pitch. We have tactical intention.
And I know in what kind of direction you are heading. We now have, if you ask me, like enough data, also enough technology to connect everything. Am I right? Let's say you have video analysis. You have a player and the coach with the idea what this player needs to do in games. Then you analyze according to the coach's idea what this player needs to do. You check the video, you check the football data, then you check the GPS data. If you have some internal load, you can explain the cycle. Let's say you have low GPS values, but you were 90% positive in all of the football actions, so you were good in that. And your football values like passing accuracy and these kind of things are amazing. So you are not unfit. You just didn't move too much in GPS because you were good in football.
Yeah.
Something like this.
Absolutely. It's football.
Yeah.
It's football. Marco, we say idiosyncrasy of that with this variable. So I know that I'm crazy about this, but the idea of to replan the linear sprinting and it's about that. It's about to think that this is different. We have to, and I have more and more ideas that I think that in the future, in the next 2 years, we are going to publish more ideas that, that curved linear sprinting 5 years ago was another idea but today curved linear sprinting is one of the main
everywhere.
Actions.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the test is everywhere and the actions are everywhere. When you see the raw data and you plot the raw data on the pitch, you can see that going away from the offside. And so, but we will leave this for a bit later, the curve sprinting. I want to stay, we discuss about now a little bit philosophical topics, specificity, correlation studies, and this is like the warm up. Now we are coming to jumps, let's say counter movement before we start to sprint in curve sprinting. So counter movement jump, I know that you and we discuss and you talk about it on the conference in Zadar at Sunset about testing counter movement. And you mentioned some interesting things there, is counter movement the best option to measure jump ability or assessing fatigue in players? So your opinion about this topic, because now you can see that counter movement is being analyzed in all of possible ways because we have now amazing equipment with the force plates. We can see the curves. We can analyze the phases. We can analyze also the intent of the player. So are you going maximal into the jump? So now these kind of things are possible. And what do you think about that and where we are heading with jump testing?
I think that counter movement jump is a good test, but we can improve the situation of the test. We could improve some details that maybe give us more quality to test. For example, the run up. Normally, football players are so familiar with run up, never apply a jump from zero. So run up approach is fundamental to be one step closer. So why people put the hand in the hip, on the hip? So makes sense that it's okay. It's good. As I said before, it's a good in terms of reliability. But if you put your player to do the jump with the free arm, if the player is familiar with the jump, no problem with reliability. So this is good for general population. The counter movement jump is good for general population, not professional player. But in real context, if we put a ball overhead, a run up approach, and we leave the player do a free jump strategy, we define only the run up distance and the ball, for example, you obtain a very good reliability criteria. And you can imagine that the validity is over the CMG because the validity is higher because it's more specific. So you have better intention. You have more performance, about 10% in vertical jump. If we, in my PhD, we compare run up and vertical jump with versus without the ball. And we have 10% more performance with the ball presence.
With the ball.
Yeah, it's crazy. 10% is so much. It's so much with the ball. So they suggest that the ball is crucial to assess the jump.
And I have now some questions about the whole procedure, or let's say, well, before that question. So you propose to adapt counter movement jump to the football actions.
Absolutely.
So to test it, do you think that we should test counter movement as usual with jump on the football way, or just teach the counter movement and test on the football way?
Yeah, my idea is to test the vertical jump, the jump capacity of the player always with the ball. You only define the run up. Okay, you have, I don't know, 5 meters of run up, 5 meters run up, and you have the ball. And then you obtain the vertical jump or the temporal variables to analyze the fatigue of the time, the contact time of the player.
Contact times, yeah.
Can you imagine that in this specific situation to assess fatigue, performance, status, profiling, the vertical jump, for example, the impulse, for example, or other kinetic variables?
Yeah.
And for the player, it's so motivating. So I imagine the facilities of the club with ball hang, a lot of ball, okay, and testing the player with the ball always. So this creates a context in football so good for the player. And maybe you can test even the landing. You can test the landing mechanic quality, for example. So, and you can say me, okay, Alberto, but it's impossible to be 100% of a specificity. Okay, it's not yes specificity or not specificity. There are a degree of specificity. You can be one step closer. So in all tests, we have to replan what players do during the competition, how player jump, and obtain the conclusion to modify your test, always obtaining the reliability criteria. If you have the reliability criteria, and in heading test, that this is our test, the heading test is the test with run up, with the ball overhead. In heading test, we have lower than 3% in coefficient of variation. So, Marco,
that's good.
A good reliability. The problem is that it's a parabolic trajectory. It's not vertical trajectory.
Yeah. So this was my next question, like how to detect when is the right time for the player to jump off, and how you dictate the height of the ball, because it depends on the player. Is it tall, short? So just to explain a little bit to the listeners the whole idea.
Yeah. In my second paper of my PhD, we obtained the data with a free platform, Kinovea, and the mobile. With mobile and Kinovea, you can obtain the jump age of your football player in this parabolic trajectory. And the second one is that you have to put the ball 1 meter overhead. With 1 meter overhead, you have, because it's a distance that player think that he can achieve the ball, but never achieve the ball. So 1 meter overhead is a good distance to.
It's a good distance, yeah.
You have to create expectation to obtain the maximal capacity of the player, but never achieve the ball, never contact the ball. So this is the answer to two questions.
Yeah. Okay. Amazing. Yeah. Well, this is it, because now people will understand the whole idea, but also the organization of the testing procedure. Let's now go outside from the gym and let's go to the pitch. Let's go to the field. And now we need to warm up ourselves for some finishing and some football drills. And this brings me to curve sprinting. And this is a test that you design and validate before 6 years ago. Am I right?
Yeah, we were the first in talk about curvilinear sprinting in football. I don't know if it was maybe 9 or 10 years ago. We talk about curvilinear sprinting in football. It was a crazy idea. And why curvilinear sprinting? This is the first question. Why do you think that players do the 85% of sprint in curvilinear trajectory? The first of one is by tactical, the tactical intentions. So as you know, the offside position, try to player normally try to do curvilinear sprinting to entry in the behind of the central back at the maximum velocity. So they apply curvilinear to avoid deceleration and an entry in this part, avoiding the offside position. This is the first of all the tactical arguments. So the second one is by eco mode. So and normally player avoid deceleration because, as you know, deceleration is so metabolic and mechanical demand. So
yeah, it's demanding.
Yeah, it's also demanding from mechanical and metabolic. So player avoid deceleration. How you can modify your trajectory without decelerate with curvilinear sprinting. So normally, if you try, for example, if you attack the space and the ball is not in front of you, is in the left side or right side, you don't apply a linear trajectory. To do a curvilinear sprinting, avoiding to lose velocity to obtain the ball and to avoid deceleration. So curvilinear sprinting is at the end a way to move on the pitch, avoiding deceleration to keep the velocity. So it's the most frequent sprint in football. There are a lot of degrees of curvilinear sprinting, depend of the position, depend of the player, and depend on the capacity to do this curvilinear sprinting, because centrifugal force is so important and you can assume more or less centrifugal force. So, but this is maybe the most important sprint in football in terms of trajectory.
Yeah, and it's been, like you said, from the first idea, 9 years, now 6 years from the research project, and now we can see a lot of clubs are implementing the test, but also the drills inside on the warm-ups. And yeah, it's a huge thing, but let's be clear for everybody who will be listening to this. If you need just to say a few things, that pops up on your mind when it comes to difference between frontal running and curvilinear running. So what will be the main difference between those two?
For example, we found difference between the legs because in linear sprint, both legs play the same role, but in curvilinear sprinting, we have inside leg and outside leg. And for example, the AMG activity is different. For example, internal leg is more activates the adductors, and external leg the biceps femoris. So there is AMG different activity in terms of spatiotemporal variables. You have higher contact times in internal leg that we know that is the limiting factors of curvilinear sprinting. The inside leg is crucial. Improve the inside leg force application is crucial to improve the performance in curvilinear sprinting. So it's crucial to have this in account because, for example, for hamstring injury, we have to think that the vast majority of biceps femoris actions are not in linear sprinting, it's in curvilinear sprinting. Maybe it's by the torsion of the pelvis, but biceps femoris, for example, in the outside leg has higher activation than the inside leg. So maybe we have to consider this to hamstring injury prevention research.
Rehab, yeah.
Yeah, and in the rehab, and so curvilinear sprinting at the end is not just a test. It's a drills. It's a main movement in football. So we have to consider to include curvilinear sprinting when we are going to try to improve the acceleration and the maximal speed exposure in our microcycle, for example. So it's different to change of direction. It's different to linear sprint. We found about 35% of shared variance between linear sprint and curvilinear sprinting. So in elite level is lower, in academy is higher, the relationship, because the population is more variables, is more heterogeneous, so the correlation increase. But in elite level, the correlation is lower. So Curvilinear sprint maybe it is in the middle between change of direction and linear sprinting. Is one more drills that we have to consider in our training and our testing. If I have to choose between linear sprinting and curvilinear sprinting, I always choose curvilinear sprinting because it's more frequent. So no doubt for me, this is my opinion, but it's not the it's not the opinion of everyone. It's only my opinion, Marco.
Yeah, but it's good. Well, it's a direction like with the curve sprint and everything. So you need to have some vision, idea. You study it, check it. So this is how the curve sprint also born, with the idea and with the opinion.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, and to go to the, let's say, using, you mentioned the hamstrings muscles, different activation of adductors during the curved sprint, and now we are getting a lot of EMG information and biomechanic analysis on the field, and this will definitely change the approach how we build gym sessions and gym work, and let's say movements used in the gym. So you had an idea about the counter movement and curve sprint. Does this change your way how you do gym work? And what's your opinion about fundamental movement patterns when it comes to the gym? Like squat, deadlifts.
When I see, I repeat again, when I see football player train in the same way that basketball player, for me, it's crazy. Even in the gym session, some people say, okay, what do you want, Alberto? Do you want ball in the gym? Maybe yes. Maybe in some actions, you can include a ball in the gym. So what we try in the gym, we talk about fundamental movements, basic movement. What is basic movement? What is fundamental movement? Fundamental movement is what you do in the match. So the first phrase that I have to say is that force is not just a magnitude. Force is also direction. So force is vectors. When we train in bilateral condition, vertical projections, purely vertical projection, okay, we say this is have transfer on the real situation in football player. I have some doubt about. Some papers say yes, some papers say no. But in my experience, when we train in no specific situation, squats, vertical jump, and you can imagine the rest of exercises, the rest of drills, I think that we have less transfers on the field. So I like train in single with single leg. I like to train no in vertical, more horizontal. If I apply more details, maybe in diagonal playing is crucial, maybe because the first step of all acceleration, I'm sure that are in diagonal, is not in frontal, is not in lateral, is not in vertical, is in diagonal. So I try to always to think in the movement in football. So we have to live to break the single plane movement and to include more plane, more direction in our movement. We have to increase the sale of the key equipment that provide this water equipment. So
Yeah,
a little bit, because the vast majority includes only one plane. Okay, if you have in the react process and you have to activate any muscle in eccentric condition, if you have to keep isometric, okay, it's perfect. In this specific context, I can support that. But if you want to improve the performance or mitigate the prevention, you have to mimic within of your capacity. You have to mimic the same movement that the play do during the match with load. This is for me the key point. Load the specific movement that your player perform during the match. It's so difficult. Yes, we have to replay the strength equipment and the other devices. Yes, but this is the idea of the future. We have to replan all these gym devices that we use in only single playing and with bilateral condition. Okay, it's fundamental. What is fundamental? This is the first question for me. What is fundamental? What is the basic?
Yeah. Especially when the research from before, and when we established that fundamental things were established before we understood maybe things with more, let's say, info that we are gathering right now, and with the technology that we are having, maybe we should rethink the things that we are using in the gym. But and let's say if you need to provide an example of that training session in the gym, so how does one in season or pre-season gym training looks like when you are doing it, when you are training with athletes?
Okay, for example, in my case, when I work with individual player, I always focus on the main injury in football, hamstring, ACL injury. In hamstring, I try to improve the end range of the force of end range of hamstring. I try to mimic the situation of the sprinting. So in the gym, I normally use the cable or similar device for improve this situation. I always try to improve the landing, to improve the ACL injury mechanics. How do they improve? With bilateral, no, unilateral condition, maybe horizontal load. Maybe I imply the harness in the trunk, because the trunk is crucial to mitigate the risk factor of ACL injury. So at the end, I imagine the injury mechanic, and I try to mimic this in the gym, introducing loads. So, for example, if I want to work deceleration or acceleration, I work with squats. No, I work acceleration, for example, in diagonal step. Okay, trying to step up in diagonal, no frontal and no lateral, maybe in the middle. I put vertical loads and horizontal loads too. So if I want to improve deceleration, I do back pedal. No, I apply deceleration inside position, maybe also in diagonal, because it's the situation, the typical situation in football. So at the end, I try to generate a framework in which I say, okay, I have acceleration, deceleration, hamstring, exercise to avoid, to mitigate risk factors, and ACL. And I create drills adapt to football. And this is my way, in easy way, okay, explain only in 2-3 minutes, how I understand that. Always thinking it's the movement that players do during the competition. Always, this is the reference. My reference is not to obtain the best data. My reference is not to try to compare how many repetition or what is my repetition maximum. No, my idea is tell me what exercise you want to do. This is for me the quality. It's not the data. It's what exercise you try to do. For example, I'm designing now a belt. It's a belt that allow you to move in 360 degrees because they give you more freedom when you turn in the gym. If you, for example, use any resistant device to improve the starting position, you have to try to turn to improve this action, for example. So at the end, I try to do that, to looking for the specificity in the gym, the specificity on the field, etc.
Yeah, and you mentioned the percentage of RM and this kind of methodology, and I get a lot of questions, from the coaches, like how much of work is enough, that you can say these are the numbers. And when you're hitting RMs and back squats and exercises like this, you can, well, not easily, but you can say, yeah, it's enough if you do like 75% of RM and this is what you want to be or something like that. So how do you do this for that exercises? How do you say to yourself, this is the zone where I want to be. This is enough gym work. Now we can do everything else on the pitch. I know it's sometimes hard to answer on this, but just the way of how we think about it.
Yeah. You know that now the velocity-based training is the main device to assess the fatigue in the gym.
Yeah.
So I have normally a device that assess me directly the acceleration. So normally is estimation is not directly assess the velocity, but with these devices, I cannot say the name, but with these devices, I can obtain an acceleration in all planes. So with these acceleration values, you can obtain the loss of performance, the winning of the set. So you can stop the set when you can see that the percent
dropping.
You can see a drop in acceleration, in the peak of acceleration, okay, that you can define in 5%, 10%, 15%. So you can define and you can control the degree of fatigue that you can apply in this session. Okay, if I have a session in which I have crucial to keep the fatigue in good condition, you can apply 5% of the peak. So it's enough. So 3-4 repetition and out. You can rest. So but at the end, if we can assess the velocity in this projection, why not in diagonal projection? So we can apply the technology to any direction, horizontal. For example, you know that
rotating, horizontal. Yeah.
Absolutely. So at the end is to try to looking for the solution for that movement. Because if we think always in vertical and horizontal, at the end we have a very big limitation. But in the balance, for me, it's more important to design a very good exercise that to have, okay, I have the totally control of the movement in squats because I control the fatigue, I control the intensity, I control the volume. Okay. But the exercise is so far what players do during the match. So you have the control, but this exercise is one music, and this exercise is another music, more similar to what players are going to do during the competition.
So your future directions, but also next research directions from the FSI Lab. Where are you heading? What are your future projects? And tell us more about that.
Now we are going to start a very promising project. It's about that. It's about to define in details the high intensity actions. I mean sprinting, acceleration and deceleration from technical, biomechanical, and contextual approach. So we are going to try to generate assessment tools that give us ideas about what do my player, and this give us more ideas to what can use in my gym, how can modify my session to try to be closer of the competition. So this is a promising project with my friend Jesus Olivares, Fabio Nakamura, Jose Asian, Francesco Aiello. So there are a very important team behind this project. So we are going to define details of this high intensity action, technical variables, biomechanical variables. The idea is to put together GPS data with video analysis. So at the end you have the video, you have the tracking data, and you can complement both to obtain a bigger picture about what players do during the competition in the most important action in football. That is the high intensity action. That all are very close of the ball and is where all more important part of the competition occurs in these actions, in high intensity actions, of course.
Yeah, and we can see that by analyzing, like but also in female teams, in male teams, after the, let's say, big competitions, that constantly those numbers of high intensity actions are increasing, especially when you are getting closer to the finals. So yeah, this one important part of the games and should be studied definitely more. Alberto, thank you for your time. Thank you for this amazing episode. I wish you all the best in the future with FSI Lab. Well, and yeah, I wish you all the best in the future and with the whole project.
Thank you so much, Marco, to Ultrax team. To me, you know that is an authentic pleasure. I'm super excited to be here, and for sure that we will have another one, the second part of that, with more details to discuss
we should do
about this hot topic, very hot topic.
Yeah, we should do one more episode because I have like I said, 10 more questions about the teamwork, field work, and the directions of research. So let's leave this for the next time. Alberto, one more time, I wish you all the best. And for all of you, continue to follow our webpage. You can find a lot of talks like this, materials. Again, we will soon have few webinars open. And yeah, follow the social media. And I wish you guys all the best.